Hey class, today we're going to talk about how to set up your project number 1 after we've finished with the sample project. So to set up the first project, first thing you want to do is log into your SiteGround and go to your file manager. From here, click on new folder, and we're just going to call it project 1, like the underscore. Create the new folder. Okay, and you'll notice there's nothing actually in that file or in that folder. Okay, now we want to go in and set up our database. So if we go into the C panel, we'll click on MySQL databases. From in here, we're going to actually call this project 1. We can call it Pro 1, that's a perfectly acceptable name. Create the database. Now we'll go in and create a new user for that database. Pro 1. Generate a password. Again, let's generate a password that doesn't have so many special characters. Really don't like the special characters. I'm going to get rid of the special characters, and I'm going to add some numbers, maybe a couple of capital letters. Okay, now I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to use that password. Okay, I'm going to create that user. Create user. Okay, go back, and now I want to attach that user to that database. So I have the Pro 1 user and the Pro 1 database. I'm going to add that user to the database, give them all the privileges, make the changes, and now that user has access to that. Next, you'll want to find your sample project folder. So go open up your folder. Copy your sample project folder and just paste it. I'm going to rename this project _1. Okay. Alright, now you'll notice I have all of the files and folders, everything from my previous assignment, but now it's all in project 1. Okay. What I want to do is I want to take my project 1, open up a new window in Atom, and I want to take my project 1 and just drag it right into Atom. Notice it says project 1. I have my private, my FTP config. So I now go into packages, and I'll go into project manager, and I'll just save that as a project. And that project is now saved as project 1. Okay. And I can go into my FTP config file, and what I'm going to want to do is, instead of calling it www.sample-project, remember I made that folder called project_1, and that's where we're going to want to put our project. Okay, I'm going to save that, and I'm going to go back into my packages, my remote FTP, and I'm going to connect. It connects in just fine, and now I want to go back into my remote and hit toggle, and I'm going to look at my remote side. And if I refresh this, there's nothing there. So what I want to do is I want to upload my whole project. So I'm just going to upload the whole project out to the remote. And you'll notice that it's being sent out right now. If I right click and hit refresh, notice that it's all out there. Okay. Now if we go out to the web and we go to your website /project_1/public, you should see this the sample tax application, because you just copied it. It should work. It should be still connected to your old database, pulling all your old data. Okay. Now, what we'll want to do is fix it so it points to our new database. So if we go back to our C panel and go back to C panel home and go into our PHP MyAdmin. Before we were in the MySQL databases, now we're going to be in PHP MyAdmin. Here's where we're going to go ahead and create our new tables from the Pro. Okay, so we'll probably, for sure, we want to have the user table. So we're going to call it a user table, and in the user table we're going to have an ID. Remember, lowercase, int, and we make it an AI, and click go. We don't change any of those. Okay, then we can call one username. We'll probably want that to be a varchar, and let's just make it 50, and password. varchar 50, and finally we'll just say first name. That way we can have the person's first name, and varchar 50. Okay, and we click save. So now we have our first table in our first database in MySQL. Still go to the sample app. I'm going to refresh the page. It still does not have. It's still not connected. So now what we want to do is we want to go back to our Atom and we want to connect in to the database and make sure our database is working. So now that we're in Atom, we can close our FTP config. We can now go into the private and the database config, and this, notice this is still connecting to the old database. Okay, so we want to call it Pro1, and the user was Pro1, and just type in that password. Oh, that's the wrong password. I have it saved in my clipboard. Let's grab it over here. Get rid of all of this. Save it. And now if we go back and view the website, it should connect into our new database. Alright, let's see if it connects into our new database. It does. So we know it's connected. How do we know it's connected? Because the query failed. If it didn't say database query failed, it would have thrown an error saying could not connect into the database. So we know it's connected into the database. Now we just have to start writing the right queries and making sure that our queries work. So next, let's work on changing out some of the headers and some of the navigation. So let's pull up the actual project file and take a look at that. So I'm going to pull up some of the diagrams, and let's take a look at the diagrams and see what we need to make changes to it. So here's the diagram. On the second page, this is a copy of our navigation along the top, and it should say Blog Manager. Okay, so if we go back over to our code, we should be able to take a look at that. So in our code, I can go ahead and close the dbconfig. I'm going to go to shared, and I'm going to click on header. Okay, and I can even click on footer. So in the footer, it wants us to, let's just take a look at it and see. It should say Blog Manager. So we change the footer here, call it Blog Manager, copyright, everything else is right. We can go ahead and close that. And let's go ahead and look at the header. In the header, it should say, for the title, it should be called Blog Manager. And you know what? I want to call it, my first name, Brian's Blog Manager. Okay, so you guys can do that also. Under sample tax application, let's call this blog and on one side, and let's call it manager on the other. Just like that. And instead of just having the index file, we can also add some files. We got home, add a blog, archive blogs, payment, report, and log out. So 5 of them total. So the last one can be log out, and then payment report, and archived. Should we spell things right? Archived blogs, and add a blog. Okay. So over here, for current, let's just give these one names. Let's call this report, this one archived, this one blog, and home is fine. And we'll talk about that. And we'll just call this one log out, although you'll never see it. And what this does here is it makes it highlighted if it was in that current. Essentially, if we're on that page, it stays highlighted. Okay. All right. Well, let's take a look. I went ahead and saved that. Let's take a look and see what that looks like. All right. I'm going to go ahead and go back to the sample application. I'm going to hit refresh. All right. So we changed out. It says changed out blog manager here, and it also says all these are also here. Now they won't work, They'll just keep going to the index file because we didn't actually change where they go. So we'll need to work on that. But notice the footer's not being loaded because the database is killing the whole thing. So the database query, once we get that fixed, it should return everything. So at this point, we can start building out our pages and making them look good. If we look on the home page, this is the home page. Notice we need to have a table here with we got 5 columns in the table, and it needs to pull right from the database. Okay, so that's what we would do now is we'll go in and start working on that. At that point, you guys should be able to start working on your own projects, and this is how you'll have your project set up.